This is Bill Ryan from Project Camelot and Project Avalon, and the date is the 16th of February 2010. Now, this is a British person, and he worked in the British military for a number of years, and after he retired from the military, he worked in the City of London in a fairly senior position, in a respected position in the City of London. And for those people watching this video who don't know about the City of London, the City of London is it's like an enclave. It's like a financial enclave in the heart of London itself. Some people consider it almost a little bit like the Vatican. It's very old, it's very ancient. It's the heart of the financial system, not only of Britain, but possibly the world. Many researchers consider that it's very likely that the City of London calls the shots on the financial systems in America. They've got control over the Federal Reserve, the Bank for International Settlements, a whole bunch of things that happen. This is like the nerve center of the financial world. And it's very Masonic, it's very ancient, it's very traditional. And our source attended a number of meetings with senior Masons. And while many of these were interesting, they were routine by City of London standards. They were discussing financial affairs and so on and so forth. And then in June 2005, he attended another meeting that he thought was going to be a routine meeting, but actually this was something rather unusual, and he realized it was unusual as soon as he arrived. In fact, in his interview with us, the one which we have the transcript of, you will see that he says that he felt it was an accident that he was there. He shouldn't really have been there. He didn't know what was happening. And as such, he didn't really participate in the meeting. He was there as a little bit as a fly on the wall. He was just listening to what was happening. And at first he didn't even understand what was being discussed. Now, the people there were Masons. There were senior Masons. They were about 25 or 30 people there, including senior politicians who most people in the UK would recognize by name. I do not know who they were. He didn't name them, and I didn't ask them, but he said these are well-known names. The chief of police was there, representatives from the church, representatives from the military, 25 or 30 people. And what they were talking about was a plan that had clearly been made a long time ago. And what they were discussing was they were discussing the implementation of this plan. They were discussing how things were going, whether they were on track or not. The first thing that he heard was they were talking about the fact that Israel didn't look as if it was getting prepared to attack Iran anytime soon. This was a problem. Even back in June 2005, they were apparently concerned that what it was that was planned on some kind of a timeline wasn't rolling out according to schedule, and this was an issue for them. Then they were talking about China and how powerful China was getting, both militarily and financially, very quickly, and that the Japanese weren't doing what they were supposed to do, which was to interfere in some way with the Chinese financial system. They weren't doing that, and this was another problem because China was getting too strong too quickly. Other things that were discussed were, for example, the coming financial crash, the centralization of resources, everything that we saw starting to happen in October 2008. They were planning that and referring to it in their meeting in June 2005. It starts with Israel attacking Iran. Now, this hasn't happened yet. There have been a number of indications that there are forces which are trying to push this into happening. You've only got to follow the news for the last 2 years to realize that the public is being prepared for a justification for this kind of thing. Iran is being set up as being the bad guys that deserve something to happen to them, and so on and so forth. Now, that's going to be the start of what is like the opening gambit in a big chess game. And the plan is to provoke Iran or China to retaliate. And our guy, our source, who is a military man, is privately as convinced as he can be, although this has never been made public and this is not publicly known, that Iran does have nuclear weapons. He believes that they have been provided by China behind the scenes. And all of this is intended because it's all right with these controlling forces that Iran has nuclear weapons, because they want them to be used. The plan is for either Iran or for China to retaliate after Iran is struck with a nuclear weapon. At that point, there will be a limited nuclear exchange in the Middle East, followed by a ceasefire. During the time of this ceasefire, everyone's shocked, everyone's frightened, everyone's really terrified about where this is going to go. There are all kinds of heavy controls over populations everywhere. And then the next thing that happens in this chess game that's being played is that biological weapons are released on China. You heard this being discussed in this meeting. They will release a flu-like virus that will be genetically targeted against the Chinese population. And after that, then what effectively will be a kind of plague will actually spread right across the world to the West as well. Our source was not clear whether this was a Chinese retaliation or whether the thing would just spread out of control in the way that it would be very understandable if it did, whether it's racially targeted or not. These things actually mutate. And then, he said, then the real war starts, something that would be justifiably called the Third World War, with a much more major nuclear exchange. He said, absolutely, it's about population reduction. So I said, well, in this meeting, did they mention any figures? And he said, yes, they did, 50%. Half the world's population. This is planned as per the Georgia Guidestones. For those of you who don't know what the Georgia Guidestones are, it's a stone monument in Georgia in America that was erected anonymously a number of years ago. It's in 8 languages, and it's like an Illuminati manifesto for a new world, as it were. And just hold that thought about this being a manifesto for a new world. This is an important concept here in what I'm presenting. One of the key parts of this manifesto for this new world is that there should be a population of 500 million people. Now, 500 million people is an enormous reduction from the nearly 7 billion that we've got at the moment. That's pretty much 95% of people who would no longer be on this planet. And 50% is a step towards that. And there's a reason why they're doing all of this. There's a reason why they're in a hurry. There's a reason for this insanity. And when he was explaining this, then he said that they have a name for this plan. This project has got a name. And I said, well, what is this name? He said, it is called the Anglo-Saxon Mission. The Anglo-Saxon Mission. He says that he is as sure as he can be that the people who are calling the shots in the world, you can call them the Illuminati, the controllers, the cabal, whatever name you have for them, they believe that there is going to be what he called a geophysical event, a major geophysical event. He says that the best information that he's got is that the insiders believe that this is going to happen, or they are concerned that this is going to happen. And many of you watching this will know that this isn't a completely crazy idea. There have been trillions of dollars that have been spent on deep underground bases for some reason which we don't know why it is. You will know about the seed bank in Svalbard. This is in the public domain, where all the seeds of all the plants and all the crops in the world have been buried deep inside a granite vault in northern Norway. There are many precautions being taken as if something might happen that could really threaten some of these valuable resources, including the seed banks of the world. Now, if there is going to be a geophysical event, as they believe, this is because it seems to be preserved Illuminati inside knowledge, whether it's true or not, that there are repeated cyclical geophysical events about every 11,500 years. Information about what really happened to Atlantis was very probably in the Great Library of Alexandria that burnt down a couple of thousand years ago. There are persistent rumors that much of that information has been retrieved and it's in the Vatican Library. This is information which is not in the public domain and which the insiders may have access to. Whether it's accurate or not, the important thing is to realize that they probably believe that this will happen and they're making their precautions. And this might be the justification for this insanity that we've just heard about in this plan. Consider this. He said, if there's going to be a major geophysical event, something like a pulse shift, maybe it's Planet X, maybe it's some kind of energetic phenomenon that the solar system is going to be moving into, that's going to somehow destabilize the Earth or the Earth's crust in some way. We don't know. But if there were to be a major emergency like that, something that would actually make a war look very inconsequential, the thing that will help the human race to survive it, or will help parts of the human race to survive it, is if there is already emergency preparedness in place before it happens. In other words, if you knew that there was an emergency coming, if you knew, for instance, that there's a hurricane coming in to hit your city, then you put all the emergency preparedness in place beforehand. You have the troops ready, you have the infrastructure ready, you have the military ready, you have everything that you need ready to handle this situation so you can respond and react and recover in the best possible way. Our source suggests that the reason for this whole Third World War scenario is that then the Western governments, with the Chinese out of the way, will be in a state of such totalitarian control of their own population that they will be best equipped to recover and rebuild the new world after a cataclysm. And he thinks that this is what's happening. People aren't capable of doing this against other people. There's something else behind this. We have to think big. We have to think from the highest spiritual viewpoint that we possibly can do.